Good evening. Is everybody sitting comfortably? Good. That's good. That's how these stories start, in comfort. We like comfort. It's comfortable. It's warm and chewy. It settles you. It settled Gertie once, long ago. Warm and chewy comfort. See, he's at the center of our story, Gertie. You wouldn't say the hero, but certainly the large, warm, and chewy center. You see, that was his trouble. He loved anything with a warm and chewy center. He loved eating, did Gertie. He loved sweets and chocolate, and sugar and cakes, and fizzy drinks and bubbles, and sausages and meat and breadcrumbs and bacon thumbs and oil and fat and grease and spitting and, well, not much broccoli at all. That's Gertie. That's him. Which wasn't his name, of course, Gertie. No one is called Gertie. His real name was Birdie, but his mouth was always so full with warm and chewy centers, a mangled, muffled, muted motion meant people heard Gertie. And, well, obesity rechristened him, so that's him now. He lived in a very small town, which is no longer there, next to a big city which is yet to be built with two people he wrongly assumed to be his mother and father. He didn't go to school, and he didn't have a job. He had no siblings, no cousins, no friends nor enemies. He just lay very still every day in his bed eating. And so the people of this past town were indifferent towards Gertie. Until the Tuesday. Until the Tuesday when the rain stopped. Until the Tuesday when the rain stopped, the crops didn't grow, the food didn't come, and the bellies rumbled. That Tuesday. On that Tuesday, a town's meeting was called in what we now know to be a church of sorts, but at the time was more akin to a pit with no water, of course. Everyone was in attendance. The builders and the butchers, the Clarkes and the chefs, the fishermen and the farmers, the judges and the jewelers, the poets and the priests, the seamen and sailors, washerwomen and washerwomen, and, well, naturally, zealots. Everyone, except Gertie. Gertie lay comfortably, warm and chewy, eating still. For despite the immediate halt in food which plagued the past town, he had enough lodged and layered across his incisors and cuspids and molars to feed a farm for a fortnight. So, well, he remained oblivious, quite contented. The conversations in the pit began, as is to be expected, pitifully. There was no consensus or common ground or community to which all could agree. Some suggested leaving, which is all right for some, to go to the next town across. The next town across being across a great lake which had heard tell of lurking sirens and sea monsters, so the seamen seemed unwilling to want to carry everyone along. Others suggested staying, holding tight, sure that the rains would return when most needed. After all, the rains had always returned when most needed, except for the moment they currently found themselves in. A few suggested a sacrifice to the rain god, but who to sacrifice brought about just as many problems as choosing which rain god to sacrifice to. And, of course, there was the issue of a lack of volunteers. Those who suggested the idea, said it shouldn't be them because they'd thought of it, but, the exact opposite was said of those who hadn't thought of it. No one wanted to die. No one that was there, but not everyone was there. And that returns us to Gertie. Gertie didn't move an inch as the future of his home was decided. Not an inch as the fate of his livelihood was debated. Instead, he continued to chew and widen and widen. But then, why change now? Gertie had been the same 3 years back during the gas shortage, and during the medicine epidemic, and the homeless panic, and the benefits doubts, and the allowance queries. In short, Gertie had given nothing back to this small past town, just sucked from its warm and chewy center. And it was this honest and convincing diatribe that the woman he believed to be his mother had just delivered to the hushed heads in the pit. "What does one do with parasites?" she asked. "Those that take and don't give back." "We do the same," said a voice from the back. "We do the same and we take." The voice, at first hushed and nervous, grew in confidence as the crowd nodded. "We go and we take back our right." Now, the question of rights is murky. What rights as humans we have. What that involves, when that involves that. What's right to expect from such rights. And right now we do not have time to get into it, because neither did those in the pit. Instead, they climbed from there, this place we now know as some sort of church, and they went to Gertie with rope and blade in tow. You know that sensation? That sensation you're in danger? The lick on the back of your neck asking you to look around, or the twitch of an ear, the flick of a finger? Gertie didn't have that. It was the knock on the door, which first confused him because no one ever knocked. His parents would just wander in and place food on his stomach, which then rolled into his mouth, but no one ever knocked. Until the Tuesday when the rain stopped, then they knocked. He turned his head as much as he could with the rolls of every kind around his neck, and watched as the butchers and the builders, the Clarkes and the chefs, the farmers and the fishermen, the judges and the jewelers, the poets and the priests, the sailors and seamen, the washermen and washerwomen, and finally zealots, all came tumbling in. Before he could have his mouthful of fat, they had him pinned. It took a team of 4 for each limb. That's 4 teams of 4 to pin Gertie down. It was left to the poets to hold his mouth shut and the judges to wield the blade. It was at this point that the townspeople looked at one another, unsure as to whether to go ahead. And I will offer you all the same courtesy. The door is not moved. None left from Gertie's room that day for those who were interested. Certainly not the judges. The judges whose blade skated across the first few layers of Gertie's flesh, slicing off the odd hair. Now, the judges placed the point down lightly into Gertie's belly, letting the juices bubble up from the freshly made hole and slowly, palm to base, all pressed down, letting it glide in gently deeper and deeper. The screams did escape from Gertie's mouth despite the efforts of the poets and many fingers. They resorted to forcing layers of his neck fat into his cavernous gob, which worked far better. The judges, in the meantime, had reached Gertie's stomach, and with a few almighty pulls and some ugly hacking and ripping, made their way through the fat and guts to the warm and chewy center. And therein lied their treasure. The judges turned and said as one, "This is fair. This is just. The community will now feed on the parasite." And with that, each stepped forward and climbed up the giant belly and cupped a handful of the warm and chewy broth and made their way home, quite comfortable, quite contented, unthinking. The mixture, such as it was, kept each woman and man quite full for 6 months until the rain came, which of course it did. But what went unnoticed that day in the room, amazing as it seems, is that Gertie died in a lot of pain. During the struggle, just went limp. And no one ever visited him again. He's still there now, rotting, a bellow open, broth swirling. Make of that what you will. Good night.